Bigfoot might be upstairs.
Well, only one way to find out.
University. Oh, so you're an idiot.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know, you have problems with ugly motherfuckers like me, where we are not. This is not an algorithmically friendly face. Like, let's just face it, I'm okay with that. Hello and welcome to the Ghost Story Guys and Friends. I'm Brennan Storr.
I'm Paul Bestel.
And this is the show where we invite friends new and old to come hang out in our tiny mountain cabin. Paul, I've forgotten the rest already. So this is the problem with video. That's it. And tell us about their world. Yes. This is our very first episode of Ghost Story Guys and Friends, which is why it sounds the way it does. And this is our video primary show. This is our first video, our first show that's going to be, semi-regular, and it will always be video. You can find it on YouTube. And if you are listening to the audio version, you can check the link in the show notes. And if you're listening to us or watching us on YouTube, come check us out. We're mostly an audio podcast. You'll be able to tell why as you watch this show. But we always used to have people over on Talk Spooky to Me, which is, of course, our listener mail show. But this gives us an opportunity to have more conversations with people and not sacrifice our opportunity to hear from our listeners as well. So I'm pretty stoked, Paul, although terrified, because, again, video is all new for us. And I've spent the last 9 years of this podcast saying I will never, ever do a video show. So while I'm choking on my hypocrisy, why don't you tell the folks who we're going to be hanging out with tonight?
Yeah, I'm delighted to welcome Hank Estrada to tell us all about a wonderful collection of ghost stories from the southern states of America.
Yes, and over the course of this episode, we will be referring to Hank's press as Red Rabbit Press. He would like us to actually let you know that it is, in fact, GhostBooks.biz is the name of his press. So every time you hear Red Rabbit Press, just do a mental find and replace for GhostBooks.biz. And you can go to GhostBooks.biz, get all of Hank's books, which are actually books by his husband, Antonio Garcez, who passed in 2023. And we encourage you to do that. But again, that's GhostBooks.biz. And now, without any further ado, Mr. Hank Estrada. As promised, we have a very special guest today. We are sitting down with Hank Estrada, owner of Red Rabbit Press and publisher of the many books we talked about on our Haunting of New Mexico episode. We are very excited to be talking to him today about not only the Haunting of New Mexico, but the work of Antonio Garcez, who was, of course, the focus of the previous episode. Hank, thank you so much for being here.
I'm happy to be here, and fire away. There's a lot to cover.
There is a lot to cover. So I wonder if you could just sort of give us some insight on how it all came together, because I was looking at the website for Red Rabbit Press, and I've seen two different numbers. I've seen 1989 for when you and Antonio started it, and I've seen 1986.
Yeah, it's a little bit blurry now after 40 years or so
That's fair.
of us working together. The best I can recall, I'm going to say 86 we started, but that was a trial that we did of publishing a book that nobody was interested in. So we said, let's just try it and see where it goes. Long story short, it turned into Antonio's over 21, 22 books that we self-published, and we became a legitimate independent publisher, Red Rabbit Press. So
that is incredible, especially at that time, because I know there are so many small imprints now. But, the internet makes it so much easier. At that time, that must have been a real undertaking.
It was major. Neither one of us knew. I mean, we were college graduates. I was in communication, and Antonio was anthropology and cultural affairs. So he really was interested in more of a historical background and all that type of detail. And I was interested in the actual producing of a finished product and, pages and, that sort of thing. So it really worked out nicely, among other things. So
absolutely.
It was a learn as you go process, for sure.
That's how the show got started. So I very much understand.
Okay, good. You can appreciate that then.
Oh, yes. So how did you two land on ghost books or ghost stories?
That's a good story. Antonio and I met in 1983. We both worked at the same office building, which was in United States is the American Cancer Society. It's a national uh, organization that still exists. We were the only two men on the staff at the time, back in the 80s. The rest of them were all women and doing all kinds of health programs for women geared, and the only thing that they needed was some male presence. And Antonio was hired by them to do patient support. He had a counseling background, and
Okay.
I was in education at the time, and communication. So I got the part to do programming for stop smoking campaigns and cancer awareness, et cetera, et cetera. So in the course of that meeting, we became very close, good friends and associates. I would listen to him talking and counseling to cancer patients in the very next room, and I was blown away by this person, because I couldn't understand how he could be so empathetic and sensitive with such a tragic outcome for a lot of these patients. But he was really a tremendous ray of hope and a lot of spirituality. That struck me, first of all, is like, how could this young man have such a sensitivity to other people's trauma and plights that are not, good outcomes. But it came and stemmed from his childhood and rearing, and we'll get into that a little bit more. His parents being healers themselves and Native American background, etc. So that all played into it over the years. But the book project happened. We were traveling on a trip. He said, "Have you ever been to Santa Fe?" We were in Southern California all this time. Both of us were born and raised there, and
Okay.
he had family in southern New Mexico. So I said, "No, but let's go and check it out." So we went, and at the time, we had started investing in properties and flipping them. With that, you buy
Yeah.
properties, yeah, and then flip them. And that was in the mid '80s, when it was the time to do it in Los Angeles. You could not do that now if you didn't have
Yeah.
several $1 million. But
Yes.
it was very lucrative. But we got burned out about it. We decided that the next and the last one, we wanted to go to another state, and New Mexico was it. So we took a trip back to the formation of the book projects. And Antonio, being an anthropologist, studies and history, he knew that there was, and he had a spiritual sense to him, that he wanted to know more about people's actual experiences in the oldest state capital in the United States, being Santa Fe. So we went to a local bookstore, and he talked to the cashier and said, "Do you have any books on actual ghost experiences or sightings here in the capital of Santa Fe, New Mexico?" And the cashier said, "No, we have books on legends, we have books on folklore, we have books on history, but nothing with interviews of actual experiences like that." So a light bulb went off in Antonio's head. And as he was walking out to leave, the cashier stopped him and said, "You should go to the Palace of the Governors, a very prominent museum, historical place in the center heart of New Mexico." And she said to talk to the guard. The guard is known to have seen figures in the Palace of the Governors. So that was the start. And we went over there. We met the guard. He shared an incredible story that he said he'd never talked about to anybody, but that he appreciated being asked about it. And he, again, picked up on Antonio's compassion, sensitivity, that he wasn't going to laugh at him or make jokes, and told the story, an incredible story. It's in one of the New Mexico books. Then Antonio asked him, as he started to ask after that, "Do you know of anyone else who's had an encounter or a sighting?" So he said, "You need to go to another property in Santa Fe and talk to the manager and her assistant. And that property has is known for experiences." So we went, and that started this journey of and specialty that made his books stand out from all others because they're factual, in interviews, and incredible, that had never been done before. So it all started from that one attempt at the bookstore to find out, and the guy says, no, but you can talk to this guy. So people say, how did you get all these stories? How do these, people, do they come to you? It primarily in the beginning was word of mouth. After he talked to the guard,
Right.
he talked to the manager, and they said, oh, you got to go over here. So it just snowballed.
Right.
I mean, reading the body of work that's there for us all to enjoy and love, Hank, one of the
Yes.
things that strikes me about Antonio is it clearly everything that you've just clarified there shines through in his writing, because you can see in these interviews that these people are being very open, very honest. A lot of them, it's the first time they've ever spoken to anybody outside their immediate family about what was happening. And so it very quickly becomes obvious that he had such a way with people that they could open up to him about the strangest things that would
Yes.
often be off the table, it would seem, in normal conversation at that
Absolutely.
point.
Absolutely. He was in a very unique situation, and it was just, in my feeling and thinking, as it was meant to be. That was the path that was going to lead him to what he ultimately excelled in it, and became an award winner for that process and his work. It's like no other. When people read it, they can't put it down. They remember specifically, because I guess it's, this is somebody who was alive and experienced something, and it could happen to you still at some of those locations. So
Sure.
And it's incredibly culturally important as well, Hank. You have to say, because
yes,
clearly people, the normal publishing dinosaurs didn't decide to think that this was of worthwhile value. And you may say that's because of the state it was in, or the people that were involved, or their backgrounds, or whatever. But clearly, as you say, Antonio managed to capture lightning in a bottle with this project, and it just exploded. And it obviously became
yes.
a lifelong passion for you both.
Yes, absolutely. And for me, I wasn't a person who grew up as he did. With his grandparents were Native Americans. They were Otomi Indian from northwest Mexico, his grandmother, and his grandfather was Mescalero Apache from New Mexico. And so the two of them combined, they were both spiritual leaders in their communities and healers. His mother, Antonio's mother and father, were both spiritual, very spiritual. They were raised Catholic, but outside of that, in addition to that, they had their Native American traditions and the philosophies and respect for the dead and the beyond and the afterlife. So those two combinations made an incredible background, and people picked up on that. As you said, Paul,
Yeah.
he was really known for not making anyone feel awkward or like this is too bizarre, or even if it was, and there were some that there were
Yes.
stories that were very bizarre. There were stories that were on the realm of evil and satanic, that he has taken some of those, but they were not in the, how would I say this? They were not something that he wanted to share or promote. He respected that issue, and as he would say, I'll leave it to the people who know how to deal with those things. He could do it, and he was asked on several occasions during interviews. People would come to him, and they heard about him and read his books, and they were fearful and terrified. There were things going on in their home they could not explain that were not positive. So he was able to distinguish the two, and just be very aware that there's certain things that he was capable of doing and protecting himself and others around, but there were other things that were out of his realm. So, and one of the things I admired most, and I say it now when I lecture about him and the work that we've done, is that neither one of us has all the answers. Despite over 21, 22 books published and awards and all, he would tell you right off the bat, I'm not the only authority. I'm not the ultimate authority. I don't have all the answers. There's a lot of unanswered questions, even for me. So, and people like that, because I think they felt confident that he was not lying, that he was not taking advantage of their sensitivity or their loss of somebody or grief, that some people have been known to do professionally, I guess. But so that he stood out in that sense.
Do you think as well that because of, as you say, this sort of smorgasbord of cultural experience that he had in his childhood growing up, as you say, with the various belief systems that were seemingly integrated, very similar to how some Irish Catholics
Sure.
are able to kind of follow the ways of the Fae and the old ways, but they're also, they'll go to church on a Sunday for Mass, Hank. And yet for them, both things can exist at the same time, and there's no sort of duality to them. By having that kind of experience and that honesty when he had these situations, because obviously the other things you got, not only were you incredible publishers and collecting these wonderful cultural touch points from all around, but also there were investigations. So he would obviously be open and honest enough to say to people, I can't do this. Whereas, as you refer to there, other people would start thinking, ooh, they start seeing dollar signs. And this was obviously something that he felt very strongly about, not going down that path and treating these people with the respect that they'd shown him by sharing.
Yes, absolutely. And there was a very strong sense of Antonio's, I would say, his moral upbringing, in that you do not make fun of this subject. You do not ever make fun of the dead. You do not provoke them. Like he really despised the term ghostbusters, ghost hunters, because in his lectures, now I'm doing it now, continuing, and I say, it's a cute term for a movie idea, and it worked in the movies, but in reality, think about it this way: is your people, these investigators or researchers who call themselves ghostbusters or hunters, are actually hunting their relatives, people who existed at one point, who were human beings, individuals, someone's parents, someone's grandparents. So that was Antonio's background. It's like, you do not make fun of that. So he really despised that. So I share that with him and say, think about it. You're not going to go hunt grandma or grandpa, who's passed. You're not
Yes.
going to bust them up, right? You have
Yeah.
to respect them. And I really, that changed me. That when I learned that from him and watching him, it was like, it makes so much sense how you do that,
No, absolutely. And one thing I wanted to say, just going back to the way Antonio would write his books, he had such an eye for the local, sort of the local character of the region. We on our episode, we covered the ghost stories of O'Keefe country. And he mentioned the story in there about a fellow named Napoleon. And as I recall, this fellow knew George O'Keefe and would drive her around. And it was, just sort of just a little bit of a detail that he would throw in there about the life of this person. And it was always just enough in that book
Yeah.
and in the others. There's always just enough for you to connect with the person behind the story. So it's never
Yes.
just, ooh, spooky. It's
Right.
here is a whole person, and now here is something they experienced.
Yes.
And that is so rare.
Yeah. Yeah. Another really interesting point, he's been approached many times to do local investigative shows and research programs. One in particular, it was a major production company, and they interviewed him, and they took him to the site of the story, and I think they brought in the individual who was interviewed. But the producers pulled him to the side and said, you got to spice this up a little bit. It's not as scary. It's not as interesting when you're talking like this. And he was so offended because it wasn't scary enough. So they said, can we do some special effects? And he said, no. Why would we do that? This is an experience in itself. So see, anybody else, I don't know. I'd like to think he was not, he was really on top of it because he was aware of when he was being exploited or when someone wanted to exploit him in that case.
Sure.
And he was so disgusted and just like, and he pulled out of the project. And he asked him, you do not use my name. Do not use my name or reference my work because I'm not going to trump up the, excuse the pun, the, the story and the effects. So, yeah.
Yeah.
That
No,
says a lot
I
about
admire
him.
the hell out of that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have a huge amount of respect for that. Paul and I have talked about that a lot, about TV projects that have come and gone because, or projects generally that have come and gone because the thing they want is kind of fundamentally
Yeah.
against what our values.
Sure.
So I'm curious, over the course of collecting these stories, I mean, were so you had not had a paranormal experience of your own prior to getting
I
into
was
this
not.
with
I was
Antonio?
raised traditional Catholic, and
Right.
another interesting thing about Antonio's lecturing is that people who were at the time they would use born again Christians or fundamentalist Christians, and they would see his books at a book fair or a library, and they say, "Oh my God, that's demonic." Just the title, Ghost Stories, and then when he had occasions to ever confront them, he would say, "Don't you believe in the Holy Ghost?" And they would stop and they say, "Well, that's different. That's God. That's
Of
the
course.
Lord." And it was so interesting because you could see they were thinking, well, he might have a point there. It's like, it's not, the Holy Ghost is not sinister or evil or. So he just was so good at that. He had a great philosophy and grounding that I loved to see when he was confronted like that. But he would tell them, "Well, just move on then. This isn't the ghost for you." But he wouldn't be mean. He never did that. He was always respectful. That was the thing about him. And again, like you said, Paul, you could see it in the readings. There's something about this man, how he writes and conveys the stories. So back to your question, Brian, is that the first time I'd had an experience was with him. We were at a research location, and the man had said that his wife was hearing things in the wall, and the son was hearing things knocking. So what I would do is I would take photographs with my phone, and he would take photographs with this really high-end Nikon camera. But for some reason, I captured orbs and various anomalies on my camera phone, versus his Nikon camera. And it was always interesting. Then I thought, I don't know what that is. I wasn't there when I took the picture, but things like that. There are many things like that to this day. I cannot explain what it was, or I only have an idea that it might have been something on the other side, paranormal. But there's no proof. That's the other thing. I've had a discussion with my partner here now. He does not believe in any of this stuff. And so we have really great conversations, and he does make sense. He said there's no scientific proof. There isn't.
Sure.
But on the same token, there's no way to say that it didn't happen, or what these people didn't see or experience wasn't real, to them. It impacted them. So
Yeah. And I always like to say that, these things can't happen according to the laws of the laws of the natural world that we know about now. But to think that we know everything
yes,
about how the natural world operates, I think is hubris. I mean, the universe is unfathomably vast, and to think that we've figured it all
yes,
out from our tiny little corner of it seems a bit optimistic.
very, very true, very true.
I suppose as well, one of the wonderful things is the variation in the locations and the styles of collections that Antonio and yourself put together. Was that just one, as you say, one of those things that it seemed to be predestined almost, Hank, that this was always going to happen? Was it something that you went to specific areas because obviously you've done ghost stories outside of the borders of New Mexico. You've done collections from all over the place. You've
Yes.
done a wonderful collection of gay and lesbian ghost stories, because there is this perception that apparently people in the gay community do not get haunted, which is absolute nonsense.
Right, right. I think a lot of it now I can say probably it was meant to be, because when we decided to leave Los Angeles, being born and raised there, and go to New Mexico, it was something very, very special. And he had some family there. He wasn't close to them, but his grandparents there, he has great memories of them. And he just loved the history of it and the spiritual aspects of the Catholics, the Native Americans, the Spaniards, and the Anglo settlers, all living there to this day, and how the cultures came together and still thrive despite everything that differences that they have. But there's something about part of his philosophy and thinking was, we're all going to die, like we know. And this just proves no matter what you have, what level you're on, what wealth, and we all end up passing and crossing over alone. And some believe there's, people waiting on the other side, and some don't. So I say it to this day, we'll just have to wait and see. We don't know. We hear stories, right? We hear of the near-death experiences and people who see the light, the tunnel at the end and all that. And I've heard a lot of those. And so it's just, again, another thing is you really can't prove it. There's no scientific proof, but something happens that changes these people's lives. So
Sure, sure. I mean, my own paranormal experience is the thing that kind of tipped me over, I guess, 15 years ago now. There's no explanation for it. There's
yeah,
no, I looked, I was very much not into this kind of thing. I was very much, raised Catholic,
yeah,
Roman Catholic, and very much did not like it. And, so I was very, I'm an atheist. I'm a very serious person.
right.
And the universe decided, or God or whoever decided, no, we're going to show you that you know exactly nothing. And, I just had to sit with that, and it's you just get real good with going that. I guess there's a lot of stuff I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
I think for me as
it's been
well,
it's been a really tremendous journey we've done. So I'm very proud of it, and I'm happy to continue it. And I have to figure out how I'm going to continue it without him, because I can only go so far, not being the author, not being the researcher. And the plan was to have a book for each state in the United States. And
Oh, yeah.
we started in the Southwest. That's why the majority of them are in the Southwest. But the final one, we had stories that we had collected in anticipation of putting them into that particular state book. So this final one that I promised him uh, before he passed, I said, next year I will get this done for us. We were working on it for 3 years before he passed, but he was unable to work after a while with he had Parkinson's, and that's what he passed from. So he couldn't, ultimately, he couldn't speak very well, so he gave that up, but he loved doing it. And of course, he loved telling stories. And so that was one of the hardest things to witness and experience, is that he had his mind was there, but the ability to continue his love of speech and writing, and just so I got it done for him. It was really a labor of love, because I had to go back at least 25 years to look for these tapes and these transcripts
I
that I knew existed, but
Mm.
I couldn't find it. But now here's where my experiences came in with him specifically, because in the midst of that, I was dealing with the grief of losing him. I was dealing with, now what am I going to do with all this work that he has? Am I going to continue it? And how am I going to finish this final book? So as I was looking through boxes and files and cabinets, and I remembered he wanted in the Native American, he has the Native American Indians of the Southwest book, which is, I think, one of his most popular for the Southwest. And the reason that is so unique is because, being Native American himself, a lot of those stories in that book are not told to non-native people normally. But because of his sensitivity, his cultural background, et cetera, they opened up. So there are things in there that are tremendous, and like you would not normally hear those. So that book is really an award winner, the American Indian Ghost Stories of the Southwest. But I lost my train of thought. What I was saying? Oh, there was we used to go to Yosemite National Park. Have either of you been? Okay, it's put it on your bucket list. I mean, it's tremendous, and it's worth every moment you get to be there. But he introduced me to that park, and I was looking for. He did an interview with a Native American woman who was I think she was considered a living treasure, Julia Parker. In Yosemite National Park, she would give lectures, and she was a tremendous bead worker. Some of her basketry work as well, I think she was basket mainly, are in the Smithsonian Institute in Washington,
Oh, wow.
D.C. So she's significant. And he was friends with her. We went one summer, and she was there. I took pictures of him presenting her with the book on California and the Yosemite National Park. So when we were doing the Native American book, he wanted to dedicate it to her. And I knew we had the photos. I knew we had him presenting her with the book, and I couldn't find it for the life of me for months and months and months. While I was doing the final book, I thought, this is where I want to put her if I can get the story and find the photos, particularly when I need to put them in this book. So as I'm going through, I'm exhausted, and I'm just kind of ready to give up. And I just thought to myself, I said, all right, if you want me to get Julia Parker's photo and story in this last book, help me find it. And I'm not kidding. Within a few minutes, I looked over my head in the storage unit where I was gone through, I thought, hundreds of times, and there was a box sticking out above the cabinet. And I looked, and I went and I picked it up. I pulled it down. I took the lid off, and there was the Julia Parker file with the photos. And I said, thank you. So I said, I hear you. So and I have lots of those. So those experiences for me have been just like, I'm a total believer. I have proof, because I couldn't have done it without him. I really couldn't have. But that was just a really cool experience. One of many. Yeah.
That's fantastic. In that book, that is the pardon me, I had it right.
Unforgettable
Ghost Story Interviews.
Unforgettable
Yes.
Ghost Stories. Yeah, it's like an anthology of all of the 22 books, the best of, but there's new ones that have never been shared. But the story of Julia Parker and photos with him, the two of them are in it. So I'm very, very pleased with that.
Yeah. I mean, as you mentioned there, I was literally about to say the same thing. The fact that he'd got this connection with Native Americans has allowed us to hear, as you say, these stories that are never shared. Because
Yes.
for me, as someone who lives in the UK, I've become fascinated with Native American tribal lore and myth
Yeah.
and legend and belief, but you can only get so far as
Yes.
an outsider, which is frustrating. But on the other hand, I completely understand why. So
Sure.
it's not that I get annoyed about it. And if I'm very fortunate here, a couple of years ago, I dropped on a wonderful collection of about 3 or 4 Native American books. I just thought, who's leaving these in the middle of the UK for me to find? But it's marvelous.
Yeah.
And so with Antonio's work, for somebody like me who's had no sort of connection with that world or these wonderful tribal nations from all across the continent, it's fascinating to see these stories shared because of Antonio, because otherwise they would simply have stayed within that tribe.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Well, you referenced Paul, the gay and lesbian book too. People say, "What? No, nobody's going to be interested in that. What are you? There's gay ghosts. What are you talking about?" So they'd make fun.
Yes.
But his idea was to just show the humanity, the natural humanity, that it's not just exclusive to I don't know, culture or one group. There is a special belief in Native American um, life that people with male and female sensitivities, not necessarily gay or lesbian or bi, but it's kind of a, a fine line there, that they're very respected in Native American communities because they understand both sides. So when he did the gay and lesbian book, he was really excited to focus that using his experiences with all these other books to share more stories like that. And particularly for us, both of us, we lived through the 80s and we lost a lot of our brothers and sisters and cousins and family through AIDS, and that was horrendous. So we always
Yes,
thought we felt like we were dinosaurs because we're still around. We lucked out. But
absolutely.
anyway, that was a real special book for him to put out.
And folks, any of the books we're talking about, along with all of Antonio's other work, are all still available on Amazon. You can either get new copies, physical copies, yes, but also Kindle copies, and it looks like audiobook versions of these as well. And we cannot tell you how much we encourage you to do that. These are incredible books in a sea of, I'm going to be honest with you, pretty terrible ghost literature out there. These stand so far above the others that it is hard to describe. This is truly handcrafted, incredible work that
Thank
Antonio
you.
has
Yeah.
done over the course of his career. And I thank you for putting this out there. I have such huge respect for what you two have accomplished together, because again, I wrote a book I wrote a book in a fashion similar to how Antonio wrote it about 10 years ago. And because I wasn't seeing what I wanted out there. And, and I know how much work goes into that.
Yeah.
And so to see that you guys have done this over these past 40 years is just, it's not only, it's a sort of a work of literary art, but I hope it's an inspiration to other people to kind of go out, talk to people in their community and find stories that way. Not look at the internet's great. The internet gives me a career, but you don't need to go look at TikTok to go find ghost stories. There are ghost stories with your neighbors, the people across the street. You just have to get to know them. And again, you guys are what you have accomplished is such a wonderful example of that.
Thank you. Thank you. If I could just add on to that, is if you're just new to Antonio's work or his books, or then the last one is a great starter because it's a little bit of everything from all of them,
Right?
and it's a nice introduction to him. And I wrote the afterword, which I was really, I mean, I had to. I thought, well, who better to write the final word for him is
Mm,
my experience of him after his passing. And I'm very, very proud of it. And I've gotten so much positive feedback and people saying, wow, that's, really encouraging and just warms people's heart. And it really, I was very proud to do that. So I would put in, if this is your first book, get that one and you'll see what we're talking about here.
absolutely. And also, it should come with a warning, Hank, because it's not the kind of book you want to drop on your foot, because it's nearly 700 pages.
Yeah, it's over 600 pages. Yeah, it's like a little mini Bible, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. The good thing though, as I always say too, there's short stories. You don't have to
Yes,
read an entire book. You just take a little bit and read a short story. That's what makes it so cool. It's like you say, it's summarized and you can do it. Yeah,
and I mean, especially as well, you had the foreword written by Jeff Belanger,
that's
who was a
right.
massive fan of Antonio's work as well.
Yes.
Um, and it's for me, it's quite surprising because I'd briefly heard of Antonio 3 or 4 years ago,
Yeah.
um, and for me, it's frustrating because I'm only sort of rediscovering him now after he's passed, which I suppose is a double-sided problem here, Hank. That we've got this incredible body of work, but unfortunately, the baton hasn't been picked up. It would seem as well, and so
Yeah.
it's a joy to discover such a wonderful collection, but it's also tinged with sadness.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Very much so. Because he had so much. Again, we wanted to do a book for each state in the United States, but we only got to do the most of the Southwest. So, but maybe somebody else will. But of course, it's not going to be in Antonio's s- the way
Of course.
yeah, he
Yeah.
would do it.
Well,
So,
we're grateful we got what we did. I'll say that much.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, but at some point, I hope to, I hope to write our story, his and mine, and how the
Oh, that'd be
development of
great.
all of it, and particularly what's happened since he passed. Because people ask me when I lecture now, "Have you heard from him?" I say, yeah,
Right?
I get a thumbs up, and uh, it's really cool. I really do believe he's behind everything I'm doing, and I've had friends tell me that they don't believe it, but there's something about how I'm dealing with the grief and moving forward and continuing his legacy that shows there's something to it that I'm in touch with that nobody else believes it. So it's like you don't have to believe it. I'm living it. I am living it. Yeah.
You
Absolutely.
to celebrate him every day.
Yes.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. And he would be thrilled talking with you guys too. So
Well, as I say, we're so happy you wanted to jump on a call because I found his work in the Internet Archive. I found that Georgia O'Keeffe book, and I was going through it, and I thought this is really great stuff. And
yeah,
I read a lot of this stuff. I for the show, and
I
I was
bet.
like, wow, I love this. And when I looked him up and I saw that he had passed, I thought, oh shit. But then of
Yeah.
course I read that you're still you're continuing to lecture and publish the books, and I thought, well, this is someone we really got to talk to because, like I said, when you find something good, promote it and help it and
Yeah.
and share it. Like you found art when you want to share it with people.
Yeah.
And reading Antonio's work was like, no, I want to share this with people. I want our listenership to know about it if they don't already, and hopefully read as much of it as they can.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm very moved by that, Bren. It really moves me that his legacy is continuing, and for that very reason, not everybody knows about him. Someone said, "Oh well, I remember when we were at a book signing, and this woman passed by and says, I have all of those. It's like, when's your next one? And it's like, well, do you don't realize what goes into this, and yeah, you have them all, but here's the author. So, but
Isn't that
I just have
wild?
to remind myself, and you guys are really good at reminders that he's not everybody knows about him. He does his work isn't done, and his legacy, like anybody else, is gotta be continued.
Yeah. Well, we always like to champion not necessarily people who we think need elevating, Hank, but I think we like to celebrate and promote things that chime with us, that we feel are in our wheelhouse, that we think the people that listen to the things we do would appreciate. And I think for me, I've always considered myself very well read, um, fairly knowledgeable in the realm of the supernatural. I'd never heard of Antonio until I stumbled across him 4 years ago.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm sat here in a room full of 1,200 books. And until Brennan sent me, he said, "Oh, I found this." I read about, I don't know, it took me about 5 minutes. And the first thing I did was order, after 5 minutes, the Unforgettable book, which is why I
yeah.
know I don't want to drop it on my
Oh,
foot.
okay. I wonder how you knew not to drop
Oh,
it
no,
on your
don't you
foot.
know? Worryingly, it's not the largest book about ghosts I own, but it's certainly one of the best. I've just dipped, like
Yeah,
you said, I've dipped in and out of it, and it's wonderful. So I now have a challenge that I will be going backwards, Hank, sadly. My
yeah.
bank balance won't like me, but my mind will feel enriched, and I hope to continue to promote Antonio and your legacies going forwards, as
Yeah,
me and Brennan will
wonderful,
do on here.
wonderful. Well, just so you know, part of I do enjoy lecturing, and I do enjoy the give and take of the discussions, even with non-believers and people who are, I don't know, conservative Christians who think it's evil or something. But that's all part of the continuing the legacy. He would do it, and he enjoyed it, and it's like, first off, you just say, I'm not here when I lecture to convince you of anything, but this is my experience. And so now that's what I start out with. What I'm going to tell you is what I've experienced of Antonio after he passed. So that's the start of my lectures. And so you either you take it in, or you believe it, or you don't, and that's okay. I don't have to convince you, but this is what happened for me. So
And I truly think that's the sort of the underlying nature of this is it's a subjective experience. You can't convince someone else.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's kind of it's pointless to try because until they've experienced it, they won't understand. And I think it's wasted breath. I think just got to extend them the grace to say you'll get it when you get it,
Yeah.
and if you don't, you don't. But
Yeah.
we can still be friends. You don't got to believe what I'm selling, but
Right.
I know it's true, and
Yeah.
in time, hopefully, you will too.
The other thing that Antonio would do that I really liked is he would tell people, you don't have to believe any of it, right? But at least listen and be open to the possibility that there's something
Sure.
to this. So he really was very good about that with people who were not on board with it. So, but that's how grounded in his own life and faith and experience that he was. And I think that shows that he didn't have to explain anything. You just had to listen to him and how he presented it to know that there's something to this.
Absolutely. Well, Hank, again, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you taking the time to come sit down with us today. And when the time comes for you to write that story, you let us know. And when you write the
Absolutely.
story of you and Antonio, and we will, I mean, I'll buy a copy and we will push it on the show
All right.
for all to hear. So, because
Sounds good.
it's a story I want to hear too.
All right. Appreciate it, you guys. Thank you so much.
Hey, thank
Pleasure.
you. Just for you go, where can everyone find you online? Do you have, I know you're at GhostBooks.biz for the press.
GhostBooks.biz, B-I-Z. And then I also have my own website. It's hankestrada.com because I'm a publisher of a totally, an author of a different subject, but it's not paranormal related. But some people might appreciate it because there's a Catholic religious theme, but on the sexual abuse recovery for males.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm glad
Yeah.
that you're out there doing that again. As a lapsed Catholic, I
Yeah.
know there is a need for that.
Yeah, yeah. So that's the other side of my life that I've written about, but it's hankestrada.com if you want to know about me. But those two will get you the information.
All right. Well, again, folks, check the links in the show. There'll be links in the show notes. And as you've heard me say multiple times with Paul and I, check out these books. You will not be disappointed. Again, our guest has been Hank Estrada, owner of Red Rabbit Press. Hank, thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bren. Thank you, Paul. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.